Georgia and Kentucky this Saturday night in the Commonwealth. Probably going to be a rainy, nasty night. It's going to be great for those of us on the field, but it is what it is. What about the injuries for the Georgia Bulldogs? Let me go through a few of them real quick and give you some notifications on some other stuff that's going on this week as well. Kirby was asked today about Mykel Williams' return, and he said that he had been doing a really good job with rehab, and that he's going to have to see him practice this week to tell what's going on. There's a couple of things to remember here as it relates to Mykel Williams, Georgia's highly sought after by NFL people, defensive lineman, edge rusher. Williams, because of not playing this week, obviously bought him extra time, no wear and tear this week, but it also was the weekend where he could do work. So that means Friday, Saturday, Sunday, there was no recovery from a game. There was no build-up to a game. And you can just kind of ease your way back to, well, whatever you got. Ease is probably the wrong way, but you can move your way back towards where you need to go in terms of rehabilitation. The other thing, and this is going to be the case with everybody I'm going to mention here too, keep in mind that on Wednesday, I think it's Wednesday night, this is the first time that Georgia will have to release a SEC mandated injury report. So that's going to be another thing to pay attention to this week. Is Kirby's now required by the SEC, or the university, the athletic department is now required to give information about injuries starting on Wednesday. It's going to be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then game day. And that policy has been put in place to negate, or I would say negate, any insider information as it relates to injuries for betting purposes. So that's where we're at. This is something that Mark Richt tried this for a while in 2014 or 15, but now it's league-wide mandated. And we saw last week with Kentucky and South Carolina, that being the first SEC game of the year, that was something that we saw already. But we're going to see with Williams. We'll have that update for you on Wednesday night over on Dawg Post. Make sure you're signed up for our newsletter. The link to that's right down below. That's something that's going to be included in our newsletter on Thursday. So make sure you've got all of that. Of course, go to the site. There was a question about Oscar Delp. Oscar Delp went back into the game. I think it was for an extra point. But Oscar Delp got hurt on a Cash Jones run. Then Ron Corson and company came out to see him. Kirby said after the game that it was an ankle. I'll just say, and it may well have been an ankle. I am not a medical person at all. Ron Corson and company were messing with his right big toe during that. So, I mean, anything lower than your ankle is all pretty connected. But it looked to me like that was more of a toe thing. But whatever. I certainly don't know. And Kirby said that Oscar Delp will be fine. He said that Nazir Sackhouse was dealing with a sublux, which I think is a slight knee injury. Someone who's medical can correct me on that if I'm wrong. But I would expect, it can be any joint, but my suspicion would be it was lower body for Nazir. And we'll see Nazir out there. I'd be surprised if he doesn't play against Kentucky. And then Warren Brinson, Kirby indicated that he should probably be at practice on Monday. The timeline for these, for all of this is, we talked to Kirby at 12 on Mondays. They don't practice until like 3 or 3:30. So, I just remember I got hurt freshman year. I could not. The amazing thing, this was during basketball. I could not, and it wouldn't matter. Basketball or tennis, you cannot function this way. But I could not raise my arm past this point right here. It's very hard to play sports without being able to move your arm. One of my teammates had nailed me right here. I don't remember what day it was, but I couldn't do this. Well, they told me I could go practice, and I was like, I can't move my arm. So the reason I said that is, 2 or 3 days later, by the time that you're really ready to go, the time that Kirby gets these talks to the media versus when Georgia's last practiced or played, that can often be 48 hours, and it can be, almost 40, or 52 hours from the time that they play to the time practice is. And, whereas the data that he gets may be available from the day before, it might not be the most updated stuff. So, like, Warren Brinson's a good example. Mykel Williams is a good example of guys that he's just going to have to see during the week. For me, in my case, I just wanted to point out the one time I was actually hurt. And I could not bring my I could not bring my shoulder up this high. Kelvin Goins hit me right here when he was trying to dunk, I think. And it was very painful, needless to say, but I was shocked that I was allowed to practice considering I couldn't move my elbow above my shoulder. Anyway, I would expect these guys to, I would expect 3 of these 4 guys to play. We'll see about Mykel Williams. That's the other thing is we're going to go up into some rain on Saturday night. I hope the rain's just not bad. Like, I can deal with rain. Kirby was talking about how they had some rain practices, and that was a good thing. It is a good thing. What I personally, 4 hours of rain is a lot of rain in a row. Usually it doesn't rain that long. You know what I mean? Like, you'll get rain and it goes away, particularly in the summer. But lately, Georgia games at Kentucky, and lately the games have been either cold weather, which was definitely the case in 22, or coldish weather, like 16, 18, and even 20, where it's just, it's not nice. In 22, it wasn't that it just wasn't nice. It was the conditions were horrible. You couldn't grip the ball. I don't talk about stuff like this a lot, but I talked with Stetson just before everybody else got in the room. And I said, this was in 22. I said, how bad was that for you? Because for me, I'm trying to use fingers and so forth. It was particularly cold. I don't know. He said he told me beforehand, he said it was the worst conditions he had ever played in. And I believe him. And it was that bad. It won't be that bad Saturday night. It'll just be rainy. And I think in a perfect world, you'd never play in rain. But usually once a year, certainly once every other year, usually once a year, you play in rain. Some sort of rain. And, I'd go off the top of my head and, in last season, well, I'd have to kind of look back at the games themselves, but it's usually at least once a year you're concerned or you are geared up for rain. Carolina was rain. In 22, and I'm just going to go quick here. 22, it wasn't rain, but Kentucky was weather, and it was bad. Well, Tennessee in 22 was rain. In 21, off the top of my head, I don't recall any rain. In 2020, you had some you had rain at Missouri, which no one was at but me. And then I think in 19, Notre Dame had some rain at the start. Now, I might be wrong about that, but I feel like there was some rain in there. But like in 15, there was rain the first game, the Alabama game. You got to deal with rain. This is an outdoor sport. It's not tennis where you're running on concrete and you can slip and break your neck. You're playing on grass. And so there's no reason not to go out and play. Now, if there's lightning, it's another thing. But it looks like there's about a 70% chance of rain. Now, why does that matter? Someone was asking Kirby today about, what they do for weather situations. And he wouldn't say, which is, about right. But it looks like there's some, there could be a thunderstorm, which is different than rain. Because thunderstorms can delay games and all this stuff. Most of the day at Kentucky, it's heavier rain than at night. Kentucky has turf, so that's not going to be a problem. Like the ground, the turf on the field is not going to be a problem. But, man, I just, it's another thing. It's not good for Kentucky, I'll tell you that, for the Wildcats, because they've had such a hard time scoring and so forth lately. Obviously they were really bad against South Carolina, which was something that Kirby talked about today. Basically, they weren't going to get faked out by how bad the Cats played or fooled against South Carolina. He said they had some mistakes. Well, I mean, the problem is they're going to be playing a team that's, about as good as anybody about making people pay when there are mistakes. And look, Brock Vandagriff has a lot of potential, but he cannot go in 3 of 10 for 44 yards total. I mean, Kentucky had a total of 44 yards passing. That's just not good enough. So I don't know if that means that Kentucky will, that was passing. I don't know if Kentucky will just say, forget it. We're just going to run it with Brock. We know what he can do. And what he can do, he can win the decathlon. I'm just going to tell you right now, he can do it all. He can run and all that stuff. But if you want to beat Georgia, you've got to play quarterback. And that's harder to do than it seems. I will add, though, that 3 of the 4 guys that I mentioned on their injury updates, those are defensive linemen for Georgia. So I think, Georgia's D-line has held up better than I thought it would through these first 2 games. Those are not the best offensive lines that Georgia's going to see. However, they still have held up pretty well for my expectation was going to be. Trey Scott's done a good job for a long time. There's no question about that. But you can't keep having this many, 3 guys that are arguably starters. 2 of them definitely are. And it depends on where Brinson is at that moment in the game or what maybe they're coming out in, something like that. We're talking about 3 guys that could miss, that are starters, that not could miss, that are injured coming into this Kentucky game, the most physical team that Georgia will play outside of probably Tennessee and to Alabama and Texas. So that's not an ideal situation. So the Cats may say, hey, look, we can't throw it, or at least we can't throw it effectively. So let's just run right at them. I mean, I don't know. I don't see Kentucky there's a lot of problems in this game for Kentucky. Mainly that they're playing Georgia is what I would say. But, the lack of offensive output, and they didn't look good against Southern Miss. I mean, it was just, I don't know, man. It's got to be better than that from the Cats if they want to pull off an upset. Now, we've not seen Georgia turn it over, a bunch this season, and does weather come into that? It shouldn't. I mean, it's going to rain sometimes. It's just what it is. I have stuff for the cameras, it's going to rain sometimes. That's how this goes. But, that's not an explanation for going and being, losing the game or being slippery with the ball. That's not where we're at with things. So it needs to be that Georgia plays a crisp game up in the Commonwealth. The turf will be fine. It's AstroTurf, it's field turf, whatever they call it now. And, these injuries, if Mykel Williams is back for this game, I'm sure Georgia wants him to play. And for folks saying, no, just hold him, you don't want a guy missing a month of games. And, from, the opener against Clemson until the Alabama game is about a month. And you want guys to play. And, obviously, Mykel did not play against Tennessee Tech. If he does not play against Kentucky, you've got a week off after. I mean, that's a lot of laying around. That's a lot of not playing. And, you want to play. And the guy is a holy terror. Now, Jalen Walker's had a really good start to the season in terms of pressure and so forth, but it's going to be hard to win the national championship without Mykel Williams being in there. And so we'll just see how this goes. Having Oscar back, he didn't go in, and I think Nate Frazier was not a serious thing. He could have gone back in. So Georgia's doing okay with injuries so far. Now, we know how this goes. Inevitably, this is a collision sport. Someone's going to get hurt. Just hopefully not that bad. We'll see you on the next newsletter. Thanks for watching.